Hello, Digimon fans! It is the final month of the year, December, and I am finally clean shaven. Well, if you noticed in my past two videos, yeah, I had a bit of a mustache, a bit of a beard. Yeah, it wasn't much, but yeah, in conjunction with Movember, I actually did not shave for a whole month. But it wasn't really noticeable because, well, that's my genes. Well, regardless, we're not here to talk about my facial hair or the lack of it. We're here to talk about the first official event in Singapore. Yes, it just concluded the Starter Deck tournament and I participated in it. Woohoo! Yeah! So, how did it go? Well, before we start, let's do a quick preview of all six starter decks and how they stack up among each other. We'll start with ST1 Gaia Red. Gaia Red is an all-out aggro deck, giving you lots of DP boosts and security checks. With Koromon, Agumon, and Greymon, your level 6 Digimon will be granted 1 extra security check and 2000 extra DP, which allows you to basically clear everything in the security pile without worrying much. It also has the best removal option in the game, Gaia Force, which is a real trump card when it's revealed in the security. Just like the two other OG starter decks, it also comes with 4 blockers, which is more than the new set of starter decks which only have 2. The drawback? When compared to the newer batch of starters, it is less consistent. With 4 tamers and 10 options, you are more prone to having your hand filled with non-Digimon cards, hence hurting your tempo. Personally, I would rate this deck a borderline B- to C+. It's not actually good enough to be graded a B- unless of course, it gets super smooth and Gaia Force comes out from the security. Kokitas Blue is a control deck. It focuses on Digivolution card removal and memory gain. As good as it sounds, I find that it falls short to other two OG starters, partly because it doesn't have the firepower of Gaia Red, and neither the defensive tankiness of Heaven's Yellow. However, it might come useful against the new starter decks which make use of the Digiburst mechanic, because you can't Digiburst if you don't have Digivolution cards under you, right? The drawback? Similarly to Gaia Red, it is less consistent due to the deck composition. While in theory it could mess up the new starter decks by removing their Digivolution cards, it falls short in setting up and gets outramped by the newer decks. I'm not saying it's impossible to pull off, but due to it being less consistent than its newer counterparts, you'd be lucky to pull it off. So, grades? I think it's a solid C, even though there's a tiny chance of it disrupting Digiburst decks. Heaven's Yellow is a pretty defensive deck, with effects that drop your opponent's DP and buffing your security Digimon. It isn't exactly too bad, but not something that can match the speed of the newer starters. In an environment with all the starter decks, I would grade it C as well. It's not a starter deck one would think of for this tournament, but it still holds Kokitas Blue at bay. So Bandai put off some changes among the new starter decks. Since BT1 and BT2 brought in the starter deck blocker clones for green, black, and purple, they received new blocker support in the form of 5000 DP level 4 blockers. These blockers have 1 less Digivolution cost than their predecessors, and can also be used to ramp. The catch? There's only 2 of them. The deck ratio was also changed, with the new starters having 16 rookies and only 10 non-Digimon cards. Well, if you were watching my deck building video, I talked about how decks with 10 or less non-Digimon cards are more consistent. So I guess Bandai decided to improve them by making them less janky. Furthermore, the tamers in these new decks can also rest. Although with no way to restand the tamers, they can only be triggered once per turn, but their effects also complements the decks well. Giga Green is an awesome deck which focuses on resting mechanics and Pierce. This is basically defined by the box art Digimon, Spatula! It can Digiburst to rest your opponent's Digimon, then attack and pierce through it. Well, it is actually Hirako Kabuterimon, but if you actually go to the official Japanese site and use Google Translate on it, it becomes Spatula Kabuterimon. Another highlight of this deck is Adler Kabuterimon, which allows you to discard a security card if you delete one of your opponent's Digimon. That means you can effectively build all your level 6s to have both board removal and security removal by digivolving Adler Kabuterimon into Rosemon. Chiku Chiku Bang Bang also synergizes well with Koshiro, giving you either a discount in memory or even gaining memory if you have 3 or more of them on the field. With a green removal option being launched in BT2 in the form of Terror Clusters, this deck went for Mega Blaster instead. The same requirement, but instead it bounces the card back into your opponent's hand like Kokitas Breath. It is cheaper too. And finally, one pretty interesting thing I noticed. It is the only starter deck with a level 5 with 2 Digivolution costs. Easy RAM, I would say. In the end, if I should rate this deck, I would give it an A. Yes, it is just too good. Now we have Mugen Black, a rather defensive-oriented deck. That said, do not be fooled by its appearance. It actually packs a punch in the form of Blitzgreymon. Well, honestly, I don't know why it's called Mugen Black when it's Blitz on the cover. Well, regardless, Blitz has an extra security check while being able to boost his DP by 4000 if he digibursts. Wow, that's like 16,000 DP and 2 security checks all by itself. Furthermore, Mega Dramon can also turn it into a massive 12,000 DP blocker. That is awesome! And finally, this starter deck also brings removal options to black, with Genocide attack deleting your opponent's Digimon, which has a cost of 7 or lower. The cons? Well, frankly speaking, I heard that a lot of people say that this is a solid deck, and it really does look pretty good. However, even with the amount of blockers, it cannot actually hold back Giga Green. Well, basically Spatula will just roll through them. Well, of course, they can rely on Laser Eye to keep their opponents in check, but I don't know, it doesn't really look promising. Ratings? I'm giving it a solid B. The last available deck is Phantom Violet. Interesting how we keep calling the color purple, and now the deck tells us that it is violet instead. Whew. Well, similarly to Mugen Black, even though the name teases the existence of Venom Vamdemon, the cover Digimon is Kresgarurumon. I don't know why Bandai did this though. Maybe it's because Taichi and Yamato are more popular? Well, at least they stayed true with Giga Green. I mean, since Giga Blaster is Herako Kabuterimon's signature move. Well, you won't see it if you follow the English localization because it is translated as Mega Electro Shocker. Well, purple is pretty simple. Follows the formula of BT2 purple decks, milling, retaliation, and retrieving things from the trash. It isn't very spectacular when you compare them to green and black, really. Well, if I were to give it a grade, I'd grade it B minus. And now for my tournament report! So 12 players played in the tournament and we had 4 best of 1 Swiss rounds. My first opponent used Gaiarid! Wow! Well, it was much to my surprise really. I didn't really expect anyone to use the older starters. Well, this match was pretty easy with me hitting Rosemon early, and I was lucky enough that Adler Kabuterimon allowed me to discard their first security, which was a Gaia Force. In the end, Rosemon was my MVP as I picked up a win! The second game was a Mirror Green deck. It was a pretty tough game as I sorta bricked, and plus my opponent seemed pretty good in control as well. However, the defining moment was when I had to make a choice between playing Koshiro or ramping up my Digimon. At that time, I had Chiku Chiku Bang Bang in my hand and I could play control against him. But I was a bit too greedy. I decided to go all aggro and build up my Digimon, which proved to be the wrong choice. So yeah, my opponent managed to build up 3 Koshiro and he seemed to have a lot of Chiku Chiku Bang Bang in his hand. In the end, I learned the hard way that playing smart is more important than raw power. Game 3 put me against another green deck. Well, this time it was my opponent that bricked hard. He couldn't pull out level 3s, which allowed me to unleash Spatula. Yes, I was very lucky that he was forced to use Mega Blaster on me. It gave me 5 costs, which allowed me to Digivolve my Digimon back and wreak havoc in the following turn. I admit, it was very fortunate for me. But a win is still a win. My last game was against Black. It was pretty refreshing to see something else that isn't green really. This game went pretty well for me. Despite being hit by Genocide attack after building up to level 5, I managed to come back stronger in the raising area with the memory he gave me. Going up with Kabutorimon, Okuwamon, and then unleashing Spatula! With that, I moved it out of the raising area in the next turn and wrecked havoc. Chiku Chiku Bang Bang deserted me again in this match, which was actually a blessing in disguise. I was forced to Digiburst twice in 2 turns in order to pierce through my opponent's Digimon, and that removed all of my Digivolution cards. The result was crazy! I hit Genocide attack with my first attack, and it did not affect Spatula as it has a play cost of 12. After the second Digiburst, I checked Laser Eye, which could not devolve Spatula as well. I even hit a second Laser Eye later on, but it had no legit targets to use its effects on. In the end, I picked up an easy win thanks to Spatula and finished the tournament tied in second place. The usage stats of the tournament kinda reflects my personal grading. As expected, there were a lot of green decks. Black decks came in second place, while there were 2 Gaia Red at least. 3 of the top 5 decks were Giga Green, with Mugen Black occupying the second and fourth place. So, how did Mugen Black make it to second place? Well, apart from the fact that Suchi is a really great player and has won quite a few locals, the deck itself has its merits. It seems that Laser Eye and Genocide Attack allowed him to control the match against his opponents, while hitting security with Jazamon and Commandramon. Well, would Black potentially come up tops in the next starter deck tournament? Oh well, what can I say? Spatula really served me well. Although I just got third place, but I guess I'm quite satisfied with the result. Well, there's still one more tournament coming up on the 3rd of December. Yes, this Thursday. So if you want to join in it, remember, hit up Sanctuary Gaming, Chosugoi, and Pokebar to get your starter decks today. 2 of them grant you free entry into the tournament, and best of all, you will also get a promo pack. Well, that's all for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching everyone. See ya.